All right, it's 8 o'clock, so let's begin. Right now, as my voice reaches you, is someone in your life that if something was to happen to them tonight and you woke up tomorrow to find they were gone, you would wish that you told them how you felt. There's someone in all of our lives like that. All of our lives. Tell them tonight. Tell them now, even. Send them a text. This morning, I was with my mom when suddenly she began speaking in gibberish. There was a simple sentence she was trying to utter, trying to tell me, but it came out as a foreign language, not a real foreign language, something fictional, but she was otherwise fine. And the scariest part is her mind, other than the gibberish, was fine. So she heard the strange words coming out of her mouth. She knew they weren't right. Imagine if you heard yourself doing that. She tried and tried. Her voice sounded normal, clear, not slurred, just not regular words. What do you do? So I went over and I hugged her. We both knew what was happening. She was having some kind of stroke. It's the scariest thing someone can go through and the scariest thing to watch in someone you love. She was trying to tell me something ordinary that she wanted to do. Actually, I think she wanted to take a shower. Trying and trying, and no normal words would come out. She was on the verge of tears. Got her to the bed, called 911. EMS were great, as always. They've been here before. My mom was admitted, but I'm happy to say she's home now. It's called a TIA, basically a small stroke. She's not out of the woods because they can't control her blood pressure, but she's home, and that's good. Now, I'm not the boss of you, just your friend. Send out that text right now while you're watching. So in a moment, Dave will be here. It's been a long, I thought Dave was here. It's been a long, successful but tiring several days working on all the various projects here. I'm only sleeping about 4 hours a night and working like 19, 20 hours a day because we've got this documentary shoot that we're starting on October 1st. I'm sorry, August 1st. See, I told you I'm tired. I spoke for an hour and a half today to Melanie Perkins. Those of you that have been here before and heard me talk about her, she's her and Dave are the two subjects for the documentary series that we're starting. And Melanie, I will never reveal anything that Melanie has in terms of new evidence of any of her cases. But she did tell, I'm not going to reveal it now, but she told me some pretty stuff that was very impactful on the Andy Puglisi case, which is Andy disappeared in Lawrence in 1976. Melanie was his childhood sweetheart. She lived pretty much right next door. They both lived in the projects, and he was taken from right across the street at the Higgins State Pool. Saw him again. So she had to live with that trauma all her life. And when she went on to study film, worked on shows like American News Hour or what I forget. No, I'm sorry, the American Experience, Nova. And then when the time was right, she reopened the investigation into Andy and began the research that would lead to a lot of things, not the least of which was a documentary that won her an Emmy Award, which is an incredible accomplishment for somebody from my little city, very, very poor working class city. So it's a fantastic accomplishment. She told me things today that were very different or new information to what the little was out there reported on Andy's disappearance over the years. A lot of that was in an article that came in the Boston Globe, a series where they had new information on it every day for about a week or 10 days. This was about 20 years ago. But this really updated some information on the case dramatically. This also was not in her documentary. But again, I'm not going to reveal it. And when she's working with us, she'll decide what she can tell us and what she can't, what she wants to put out on her own. But she has a lot of new stuff. So in addition to that, we've done a lot of work covering the Karen Reed case. As you guys know, and some of you don't like, I'm always going to look at these things objectively and fairly. I'm very weary of trying to be on one side because I know how easy it is to buy into a narrative. it happens in every big case. It happens in politics. So it's not that I think that Karen Read is guilty. It's not that I don't see all the incredibly strange things, and I've seen it since I've seen all the reports that you have. So I am aware of all the things that look very much like a conspiracy, and it might turn out to be the case. And I guess I lean that way, that it is the case, even though if it's true, it's one of the most incredible conspiracies of our lifetimes. But I'm always going to be standing back trying to say, well, all right, we're hearing somebody's story from one side. We have to wait until we hear the other side, because there are some things that might look really strange now, but that might have an explanation. And that's my approach. And I hope you guys can appreciate that. Me and Dave have had an excellent partnership because we kind of go back and forth against each other. He's a little more convinced of things, and I kind of pull him back a little bit, like, all right, let's look at it from this angle. And so I think we've had a good chemistry that way. And I'm developing something similar with Sean McDonough. And Sean, both these guys in law enforcement, so they're used to trying to look at things from different angles. So we're still waiting for Dave to get here. Yesterday, he went down to the courthouse. Now, we don't want to just talk about the Karen Read case all the time, because we have an audience that is way beyond just Massachusetts. And I know I've already lost some of their attention recently because we've kind of been too focused on the Karen Read case. But we're going to still obviously keep covering it and keep breaking anything new that comes out. Oh, this is interesting too. So one of the reasons that I have a hard time getting any sleep now is it's been a while since I've been getting some sleep, but over the last few days, it seems like you'll see when we're sitting here, you'll hear my phone beep. I'm constantly getting messages coming in from other people. A woman contacted me this morning that spoke out at the hearing in Canton in front of the Board of Selectmen. She's a lifelong Canton resident, actually going back generations. So she's someone that is really bothered by what's going on there. And so these people are starting to reach out to me. Dave is trying to get on. I'm not sure if he's got his connection yet. Let's give it a shot. Dave, you there?
Evening, Kev. How are you?
Oh, yeah. Good. Oh, man, I never trust technology.
I hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Buddy? I can hear you. Incredible.
Oh, excellent.
Did you upgrade the sound system since the last time we talked? Oh my God. Perfect.
Yeah, no, nothing's changed. Same microphone. Normally I have it set up in a different room, but you guys will see me tonight as you saw me last night, occasionally reaching over. So I'm here watching my mother's dogs, and they'll reach a point where they're going in and out every 30 seconds. So I'll always be reaching over to let them in and out, and hopefully not too many mosquitoes will come in. But Dave, I was just starting to tell everybody that one of the reasons that I've had a hard time getting things done is I'm getting constant messaging now from people about the case. Yeah. And some of this is really interesting. There are people that, included in that might be some tips and things like that too. There's some people that have asked me to get in touch with you. And so I always have to kind of screen that a little bit to make sure it's not somebody crazy. But if anybody has any actual information that will help Dave and his investigation into the monsters from the 70s, or from any other related work, or anything to do with the Karen Read case. Actually, I guess that's been more me investigating that, but Dave too. So, you can reach out to Dave anytime. You can reach out through me. I'll leave it up to Dave what contact information he wants to put up there. But I think you can find him on Facebook, and you can contact on the channel. We respond to every comment on the channel. So reach out to us.
Yes. And I'm in the Justice for Karen Read Facebook page. In fact, for anybody who was at the protest the other day, there was an amazing gentleman there, a young guy. I want to give him a shout out. His name was Nick Rocco. And I just found that out about 5 minutes ago, because what he was doing was going down to the store. And if I got the story right, he brought a bunch of water with him. It was 100 degrees. I don't know what the actual temperature was, but it felt like 100 degrees there. I was pouring sweat. And by the end of the day, we were all fucking drenched. But I mean, when we got there, anyway, first couple hours, it was just brutal, man. And I didn't bring any water, of course, because piss poor prior planning, right? And I just figured, I'll get one when I get there or whatever. I don't plan things well. So one thing about me is that the people will come to understand that my wife knows quite well is that just incredible lack of foresight on my part on just about everything. So that said, there was this incredible guy there who was doing a giveaway. Basically, he was taking money for Karen Reed's defense fund, which, you know, everybody out there in the universe here, you know, I think we're pretty balanced in how we cover this. I have an opinion. Kevin has an opinion. You have an opinion. That's great. And regardless of what that is, I think we, you know, for the sake of this, what this young guy was doing, and he was literally giving things away of his own things he was coming across, and this guy took it upon himself to go run back and forth to the stores there and grab people. I mean, he grabbed 20, 30 waters at a time and was just handing them to people. And you know, I thought that was incredible, and I took the opportunity to talk to him. And then, you know, I'm sitting here on the Karen Reed Facebook page here, and I'm just going back and forth on some comments talking about the case. And this guy grabs me, and goes, you know, grabs me, whatever, you know, pulls me aside on Facebook, however you do that, and hits me up and goes, did I talk to you the other day? And I said, maybe. I talked to a lot of people. And he was like, I was telling you about my giveaway. And I guess he's doing another giveaway. It was that guy, the power of the internet. We reconnect here. And now he's donating for more donations. He's doing another giveaway, and looks like it's going to be Patriots tickets this time. So maybe we can get him on the show and we can talk about it for a few minutes with him.
Anytime. Reach out to him.
And there's Nick right there in the comments. So Nick, a major shout out to you, bro. Hopefully we can talk to you soon here live.
Nicholas Rocco, that's who it was that was giving out stuff, and
that's who it was. And there he is right there in the comments. This dude was my hero the other day. And he was
there was a lot of elderly people out, or there was a lot of older people out there. So yeah. So
and me, you know, I like to stay in shape, but you know, in my core, I'm a fat kid, so I don't do very well in the heat. You know, I got some under boob sweat going on. You know, so for me, he was my hero, and this guy had absolutely no problem. I'm thinking to myself, should I ask him for a water? Like you said, there's a lot of elderly women here. I'm a grown ass man, able-bodied. You know, I ask him without hesitation. Kid hands me a water. I mean, you know, in a world as fucked up as this one is, where everybody steps on each other's throats just to get, you know, an inch closer to some sort of, you know, bullshit station in life. This kid was just here helping people, and hopefully we can get Nick on. We can talk. Nick, is it going to be a? Tell me in the comments if it's going to be a preseason game or a regular season game. I don't know how easy Patriots tickets are to come by anymore. I know in the Brady Belichick era, they were really tough to come by. I only went to one Patriots game live in the Brady Belichick era. So
if you have any other way to contact him, you feel free to send him the stream link right now. And if he wants to come on now, we'll bring him on. I don't have any other way to contact him. We don't want to put it right there in chat. So
yeah, just hold on. Give me 1 second. He just messaged me on Facebook. Let me see if we can get him on right now. 1 second, guys.
So we're not the most high-tech operation, as you guys can see. Dave's laptop has been taken out of commission for the time being by his son. His son Connor is 4, and he's a big daddy's boy. He's always kind of hovering around him. Well, he spilled some coffee on it the other day, and so Dave's stuck using his phone for the moment. But we Dave ended up, there was a last second thing that he decided going to the hearing. He had contacted by a group that he works for, sometimes called Law Enforcement Today. And we're going to be doing a serious radio show for them within a couple of weeks, probably. It'll be a regular thing. You'll be able to hear us in your car driving to work or whatever. But they asked him to cover the case because it is starting to get that national attention. So he's like, I'm going down there just to write a story, you know, get stuff for a story. So I might as well start filming it. But we didn't have a yellow Cottage Tales shirt or hat to give him or anything like that. He was going to wear a yellow tie, but it was too hot. People recognized him anyways from being on the channel. Can't tell if he's in or out. He's kind of blinking on or off. Dave, connection issue or Dave, can you hear me?
Hey, Kev. Yeah, I can hear you. It's not a connection issue, but because I'm on my phone, I have to flip back and forth between the Facebook app and this.
Oh, I see. I got you.
So when I flip off this, it means I'm just onto that app because I'm trying to.
Yeah, you change.
All right, I'm gonna send Nick the StreamYard link right now. Just 1 second, okay?
Yep, sure.
This is some real inside radio stuff here, guys. Okay, real high tech shit. Hold on.
So in addition to getting clues and other messages, sometimes of support, we also get attack messages. I got more attack messages against Sean. So I guess he must be over the target. You know, people are sending me, I'm not even going to say it, but just people start digging into your past. When I went on Turtle Boy's show last Saturday, apparently there was this whole thing in the discussion section that I'm faking that I have cancer. And I only brought it up because Turtle Boy was telling me how his mom has, for the time being, been cured. Or I don't, he used the word cured, but I'm not sure if that's the one that applies. Maybe it's in remission or something, but of pancreatic cancer. But I mean, there's incredible stuff going on with cancer technology now, with cancer medicine. So I've had stage 4 for 5, and I feel great. And I hope to be around for another 5 years. So, but I mean, people in Turtle Boys chat, some of them were, and most of them were sticking up for us. So that's nothing against the Turtle Riders, but there's an idiots in any group, and he had 1,500 people online. So, in his chat. So there were some people that were saying that I made up having cancer. I don't know why. I don't have a fund. And I guess they were saying I'm trying to make money off it. I don't even have a Wayview to give me money. So anyways, so let's see who's in chat at the moment. We got Slatherings, Nicholas, Christine K, who helped us out with some information on Turtle Boy not being on tonight. Giovanna, Benjamin John, who's always here. Great. Thank you. Luann Kent. There was, I grew up in Lawrence, and we had some Kents. Obviously, that's a very popular name, but we had some Kents that we were very good friends with. Hi, Sue. Guys, is Dave waiting for me to? Oh, hold on a second. I gotta let Dave back in. Gotcha, brother. Dave is knocking at the door.
Yes. And you were going to make another beer, another whiskey shot, or another Bloody Mary, and ignoring my knock. And it was.
If you think whiskey goes in a Bloody Mary, son, you got a long way to go.
I know. I have. I'm talking like a guy who's been sober for 10 years. So yes.
Yeah.
I did send the link to Nick, so hopefully he comes on, because this guy was the hero of the protest the other day. He was, hey Giovanni, how are you?
And what I hope too is, I think it's great that people are turning out and standing up for justice, standing up for a cause that they believe in. And the only thing I really hope is that if, let's say, that evidence does come out, the Ring doorbell that shows Karen Reed not running over this guy, I mean, that's not going to happen. But I mean, people shouldn't be locked into a narrative. Always look at the latest evidence, whatever it is. And, at this point, I think there's an abundant evidence that Karen Reed is innocent. But, evidence is still coming out, and we still don't have a clear narrative of what happened. So people should always have an open mind and keep looking at things from different angles. All right. So what else did you see there, Dave, yesterday? You were there for a long time.
Well, it was a great turnout, as I said last night. I just wanted to touch on it for another 10 or 15 minutes. We don't want to beat this thing over the head. We don't have any new information. We could litigate this thing all day, and we don't want to do that, obviously. That said, oh geez, it was a great showing.
I'm gonna let you go for 2 minutes while the phone's ringing. I'm gonna mute.
Yeah, go ahead. Do your thing. So it was a great showing. And, there was a couple guys who were taking pictures from something called the Metrolec. I'm not really sure what that is. Maybe this is a thing only in Dedham, or, this is the thing, only in Massachusetts. I'm not really sure. I don't know anything about Metrolec. That said, I was able to kind of sit next to them, because when it started raining, it was just, everybody started heading for, an overpass, or, somewhere to get dry. And at one point I was like, fuck it, I'll tough it out and just get soaked. And like at one point my phone was so saturated I couldn't even get it to turn back on. What up, Nick?
Hey, what's going on? How you doing?
Dude, so great to see you again. Thank you so much for remembering me, man. How are you?
Yeah, I saw.
How you doing?
Well, I saw you on the show the other night. Hold on. Am I supposed to see you guys? I only see myself. Are we good here?
Nope, you're good.
No, I figured I'd give everybody a chance to get a good up close on you.
Yeah. So, well, thanks for having me. First of all,
of course, man.
Kevin, I started following you from, I saw you on Turtle Boy the other night, and I'm always interested in stuff like this. Specifically the Karen Reed case. But I know you cover other things, so that's why I gave you to subscribe. And as far as Dave goes, I saw your comment. I clicked on your picture. I'm like, I seen that guy the other day. I was like, that might take that. So,
So tell me about what you were doing there. You know, I came home and I was telling Kevin off the show. I was like, there was this really cool dude there who was giving. I mean, you came through in the clutch, dude. So what was your motivation there?
I like it. Uh, I found there's like a little Chinese restaurant, a little hole in the wall. I walked in. I'm like, do you have water? They're like, yeah.
Yeah.
I honestly think I bought every drink that they had in the fridge. And I was like, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, but everyone's thirsty. Like, I'll be back for more. And,
Right.
you know, it worked out. But basically, so I own a hair salon where I'm from, and I have tons of product. And I figured, you know, the least I could do, you know, I've donated many times to the Karen Reed Fund, and I think when you give people things or a chance to win things, it entices people. You know, it gives people
Sure.
that motive to, you know, whether it was $5, the minimum entry for the last giveaway I did was $5, and it was a lot of entries. It was a lot of people. So what I gave out last time was a shampoo, a conditioner, and a leave-in treatment. And I actually
Which I don't need.
Yeah, I can wax it for you.
There you go.
Yeah, there you
So
go.
actually, the woman who won, believe it or not, she donated $5. She got one entry, and there was about 100 and something entries, and she won. She hit it. And I told her, I was like, you know, go play a scratch ticket. It's your lucky day. You never know when you're gonna win.
Right.
So now this time, I reached out to my father. My father's been, I want to say this is his 53rd year of being a season ticket holder.
Oh, wow.
And he knows how heavily invested I am in this case. So I said, hey, you know, I know you're trying to get rid of those tickets. Can I put them up for donation? And he said, yeah, you know, as long as, you know, I don't know if you guys know how season tickets work, but if you give tickets to somebody and they cause a problem, they could potentially take them away from you.
Sure,
So,
of course.
You know, that's one thing that I'm stressing about with this donation is whoever does win, I'm doing two winners. So it is there's going to be a $50 minimum donation. $50 will get you one entry. $100 will get you two, and so on. It's going to be open until August 1st. So I'm giving people about 6 days to, you know, be able to either get paid or because the last one I did was 2 days. You know, some people maybe have not got paid, so they couldn't do it. So this one is a 6 day. It's open for 6 days. $50.
How do they get in touch with you, Nicholas?
So it's posted on the Justice for John and Karen group. There's a whole spiel. There's rules to it. You know, you got to screenshot it and all that stuff.
Mhm.
You know, you can always send me. People can send me a message because I know a lot of people want to donate anonymously and they don't want to put their name out there that they donate to this fund. So some people do send me messages. You know, I almost give them a fake name so that their real name's not used, and I know who the fake name is. So, you know, because unfortunately in the world, as you were just saying, you know, people send you messages because of an opinion, right? And it's sad. So there's many ways people can do it. They can either screenshot it, post it. They can send me the screenshot so I know that it's, you know, verified. But basically, it's in section 142. They're great seats. It is a preseason game. It's a 7 o'clock game on August 10th. I believe they're playing the Texans that game. So it's as simple as, you know, and the other thing too, some people were accusing me of, you know, trying to market and trying to make money off this. The link is right in the post. So not one penny is sent to me. It's the money is donated directly to the fund. I don't see a penny of it. Nor do I don't even know Karen Reed. I have no connection to this woman. Never spoke to her. I don't know anyone in her life other than meeting her father the other day at the protest. So this is more me. This is justice for her. You know, we can all comment what we want on the page, but unless you take action, nothing gets done. So the most amount of money that I can raise by donating things or giving things away, that's how I am going to try to bring justice for Karen Reed in this situation.
Well, send me any link that you want me to, and I will put it in the description on the YouTube channel. I won't be able to get it up there until after the broadcast is over, but I'll put it up there right away. So anybody coming back can just hit under the show me more section at the bottom, and we'll have it right in there.
The only thing with that is I think the group is private, so it would have to be like a screenshot, though. You know what I mean? Because
Send me what
No
you have,
problem.
and I'll figure something out the best way to do it. So if you want me to put an image up there, I can do that too.
yeah, because I don't think people were saying make it shareable, but I don't think a private group can share posts. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
there's
Right.
15,000 people in the group, so even if you know 10 people, it's better than nothing. So my goal, my personal goal, what I would like to see out of this is, and this might be a stretch, but I'm hoping to raise at least like 3,000 out of this fundraiser, and I think it's doable. I see people donating $250, $100, for just out of the kindness of their heart, and don't even get a chance to win anything. So at least this way, you get a chance to win something, and hopefully, people participate.
Sure, and it comes very soon, and so whoever does win that, maybe we'll have them on the show, and they can talk about why they entered. Obviously, they support Karen Reed,
Sure.
and maybe they'll come on after the game and tell us, about the experience. So that could be it. Let me ask you too, Nick. So just a little bit more about you, where you're from, how you became interested in the case, how you came to think that Karen Reed is innocent. Anything you want to give us on that?
So I'm from the North Shore. I was born and raised in further north than that now. And so I heard first, I started following Turtle Boy more about his blogs, about it had nothing to do with Karen. And I met him at my daughter's cheerleading competition at Mohegan Sun. He was walking by, and I said to my wife, I'm like, is that Turtle Boy? He's like, yeah, hey, nice to meet you. He was very friendly. This is my daughter, the cheerleader right there.
Hi.
So with that being
Karen Reed.
said, I was just following his blogs, just basically getting the gossip, right? And then he brought up this case, and first thing to me that I noticed was the autopsy photo. I would imagine if someone got hit by a vehicle going in reverse, they're not going to look like that. Especially a tall guy who weighs over 200 pounds. He's not going to get thrown 15 feet into the yard. That was my first thing where I was like, this doesn't make sense. And then when more and more started coming out, the Google search, like, we're all normal people. Who at 2:27 in the morning searches, if this is a true fact, which I believe it is, some may not, but who Googles that at 2:30 in the morning, coincidentally, while somebody is dying outside in the cold? I mean,
Wow.
I'm just using my brain here, and it's like, okay, someone's dying in cold. Someone Googles how long does it take? 2 and 2 together. Something. And then more and more is coming out where the Albert family, unfortunately, off of him being a police officer, there's been people saying that he's a cop beater, he likes to get in fights, and I'm not a fighter. I speak my opinion, and there are other things in life that I have spoke my opinion on, and I've received good things and I've received bad things from it. So that's why I'm very vocal with this, because it takes an army to defeat corruption. It's not going to take two people.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
You need people that aren't scared to receive death threats, and I'm sure you've had them. I have them framed actually, because I was in an article on the New York Times, and and they were sent to my house, and they were sent to my work, and I feed off of that because my just words upset people, and it's unfortunate. It shouldn't be like that. Everyone
Was that over this case or another case?
Nick, can I ask something? Did it have anything to do with your political leanings at all?
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing you engaged in wrongthink when it came to the social issue that may be popular now, but goes against all common sense. I'm just thinking New York Times, obviously a left-leaning newspaper that posts, all right, there it is. And what was it
So
about?
what was that story about, Nicholas? I'm sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt, but what was that story about, Nicholas?
So I got reached out to by the New York Times because I'm very vocal, and so me and we had about 500 people at a back. It was to support Donald Trump and the police officers, and so after that rally, the New York Times reached out and they said, "Hey, listen, the upcoming election is coming up. We wanna do an interview with you." It was a 5-day interview. And basically at the end of the 5 days, they wrote up this whole story, everything I told them, pictures and so on. And I'm sure, as everyone knows, the New York Times probably doesn't agree with what I agree with. So a lot of people reached out to me via Facebook. People got my phone number. People were sending, letters to my house. People were sending letters to my work, Yelp reviews, and it doesn't bother me, because at the end of the day, if words upset you that much, you have bigger problems in life than words. I mean, like, words hurt people, unfortunately, and that was the whole point of my article. Almost, if you search my name, the whole article will come up, and basically my point was like, listen, it doesn't really matter who you support. Words shouldn't bother people so much because they're just letters on a piece of paper. But the fact that people are reaching out to me, it just goes to show that you have to they try to oppress your opinion. And it's just my thoughts. It's the thoughts in my head, and this is how I feel, and I want to express it. So with that being said, with opinions come consequences sometimes, and I'm willing to accept it.
Sure. Did this have any of that article or any of the stuff you're doing now have an impact on your business? Negative, positive, neither?
So at first I worked at a hair salon, and Yelp reviews were flooding in. Go get your haircut from the Nazi. He's this and that, and luckily Yelp took them down because people from Wisconsin were writing reviews about a place in Stoneham. Obviously, they didn't get their haircut there, so Yelp filtered all those out. With that being said, I now own my own hair salon. Write what you want about me. People who come to me, and that's the thing, I'm very vocal with my clients as well. They know how I feel about things, and that's why I think they come back to me, because it's like a safe place for them. And I truly believe that what you put out there is what you're going to get back. If you preach that you're a conservative, and you Google my name, if you're on the total opposite end of me, you're not going to come get your haircut from me, which is okay. That's fine. There's plenty of places to get your haircut. And I want to attract what I want, right? And what I want is, for this situation, is justice for Karen. And whatever it takes for me to help, I'm it's going to come with the good and the bad, and I'm sure as both of you doing this.
It's a shame that you're.
Hey, Nick, isn't it weird?
People
yeah.
Good.
Isn't it weird yesterday being there? Because it was the most conservative pro-police crowd you'll probably find in the state of Massachusetts, but we were there to uncover and fight against police corruption. It was a very interesting, weird dichotomy yesterday, wasn't it? Yeah,
I mean, at one point, and I think it was only stated once: clear the aisle, leave an opening for the sidewalk. And nobody went in that aisle. Nobody walked the sidewalk. Anybody who wanted to get into that courthouse had a perfectly, aisle to get in.
Right.
And it was told once. Nobody got upset about it. It is what it is. That's what we had to do to be able to stay there, and that's what we did. And I think that brought more justice than sitting there and. There really weren't many people opposing us, but if there were, I don't even think that they would have tried to get attention from people, but I don't think they would have received it, because people were so focused on what they were there for than the background noise.
Right.
Like one thing that. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. This is web-based, so all of our responses are sort of, unfortunately, they're. My when I say something, it's a little delayed, but even when Karen, John O'Keefe's parents walked up, and people started, a little rustling in the crowd. As soon as we were told, hey, it's, respect his parents, they lost their son. Yes. Everybody immediately quieted down. It was a great crowd.
Immediately.
Go ahead, Nick. Sorry.
The people that deserved to be booed got booed. And some people might think,
Yep.
oh, that's not
Heartily.
right. Blah,
Yeah,
blah, blah.
very heartily. Yep.
But it's the people who got booed knew what they were walking into. Put it that way. They knew that there was a crowd there.
Sure.
You could see the crowd from a half a mile down the road. You knew what you were walking into, and you knew what you were going to get after court as well. And if you truly, and I will give them, I might get hate for this, but I'll give them props. They're standing behind what they believe. They showed up for what they believe in, right? It's their opinion.
Right.
And everyone is right. It has the right to have an opinion. And they showed up. They knew they were going to get booed or whatever was going to happen. No one threw anything at them. They got booed. Who cares? Whatever. But with that being said, they still showed up for what they believe in. And that's why the people on Karen's side were there, because they showed up for what they believe in. And it was probably one of the most peaceful protests I've been to. Definitely.
Nick, did you see anybody, Nick, similar to what Dave saw, where they were possibly someone doing surveillance photos, taking pictures, that kind of thing?
I was just going to bring it up. So this little old woman, I was just walking around with my sign, and she's like, "Hey, are you with Turtle Boy?" And I'm like, "No, but is there a problem?" She's like, "You see those guys over there taking pictures?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's kind of weird, I'm like, "Who knows? Maybe they're keeping their distance, just taking pictures, whatever." And right as I almost looked at them, and I was like, you know what? All you can do is smile, let them take your picture. You can't. You're in a crowd. They're gonna take a picture, whether you like it or not, right? Just like Chris Albert, he didn't like having his picture taken, and he flipped out. That maybe that's the response that those two wanted. Maybe they wanted people to gather around them and cause a scene to distract from the Karen protest. All I did was I stood there with both my signs. I said cheese, and literally as it happened, the dude went like this with his camera on me. Definitely took my picture, but at least he has a picture of me smiling. So wherever that picture goes, at least it will be a decent picture of me.
I suspect, and I don't know what Dave thinks about this, that it's not necessarily an attempt to surveil like this, like there's some kind of a file somewhere with all the people that were protesting there, or even to intimidate regular people like you. I think it's there to intimidate other cops, because that's their biggest fear, is that other cops like Sean McDonough, and there are a lot out there, will start turning here. And they recognize their own, and they're there saying, okay, if you come here and you're standing on the wrong side, we're going to see you, and we're going to get a picture, and all the other cops are going to see it. So I don't know. What do you think about that, Dave?
Well, when it's really started to downpour, I literally just walked up and sat right next to them, because I was just trying to get out of the rain. And I was like, let me see what I can do with these guys. Maybe show them my ID, and maybe they'll talk to me a little bit. But I didn't do that. I just didn't want to be that much of a hard-out. But they had no problem speaking while I was standing there. And basically what I got from the conversation is, he was flipping through all the pictures of the crowd on his camera. And he was conferring with his buddy, saying, "Oh no, is this so-and-so? No, that's so-and-so in the hood." So they had names. They were there talking about somebody. Who so-and-so was in the hood, I could never tell you, but I have no idea. But yeah, I found it interesting, and maybe they are there to see other cops. They'd have a hell of a lawsuit on their hands if they're actually going to come down with some sort of action. But I'll tell you now, guys from my workplace reached out to me today and were like, "Hey, we saw you on that live stream. Be careful, bro." And I tried to be the most, if the crowd was forming, I tried to stay right outside the crowd just so I would have that plausible deniability anyway. But and then I started thinking to myself, who really gives a fuck? I mean, whatever, it's a job. So, but I found it interesting. I think it bears. I had no idea. Go ahead, Nick. Sorry, buddy.
No, it's fine. So two things. One thing my wife brought up to me was that, they could be taking pictures to make sure not one person in that crowd makes it into a jury pool for that case. But a little beyond that, one thing that I saw, Steve Berkowitz used to be the leader of.
Yes. No, he's currently the leader. He's currently the leader, Nick, from what I'm told.
So I have a little blurb. He was the leader in 2017, and I believe the Norton. I don't know if this will get me out of it. Am I still on?
so
You're
far.
we
But
can't see you, but we can
but you're
definitely.
there. Yeah.
But we can hear you though.
Yeah. He's switching over to show us something, right? So, yeah.
Yep.
All right, hold on. Let me just look at this real quick, and I can. I'll tell you exactly who the.
Know any good songs, Dave?
Oh,
Just kidding.
Oh, I know a lot of good songs.
So, all right. So right now, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
We can
So
hear you
it
just fine,
says,
buddy.
by 2017, Canton Police Chief Ken Berkowitz was the group's leader. In 2020, the chief of the
Wow.
Norton Police Department was serving as president of the group. So I don't know what the difference between a leader and a president is. Maybe it is two different positions, and Berkowitz is still leading that metro group. But he did step down as chief of police of Canton, correct?
Yeah.
So can he?
Yes.
I don't really know much about law
Yeah.
enforcement in
Oh,
that
yeah.
aspect. So I don't know if he can still be the leader if he's no longer a current police officer. I don't know how that works.
Yeah. So what is the group a union or is it what is it?
He
It's,
could because his certification's still good, so he absolutely could. Go ahead, guys.
Yeah, and he's as long as he's voted in, he's not paid by tax rolls or anything like that. So yeah, he could.
Right.
Absolutely.
So if that's the case, then I believe
he
he
could.
sent them there. Either like you said, maybe to take pictures of other police officers. But if Ken Berkowitz sent them there, they're not trying to get anyone in trouble. As we can see in this case, they're trying to protect their. So maybe it was for the sole purpose of finding out who was there. In similar act to January 6th, they went back. They went back on police footage and found people from New Hampshire, from here and there,
right,
and
Nick.
everyone's getting summoned to court for being
right,
at a
Nick.
protest. Even if you
Nick,
didn't
I
go
got to
into
tell you,
the-
buddy. Nick, I got to tell you, as soon as I figured out what it was when I was sitting next to them and then I walked away, the first thought in my mind was January 6th. We're arresting the grandmother. We're arresting the grandmother who's ripping, a Marlboro Red outside the Capitol 6 months later. We're busting down her door. So, I'm not trying to, nothing happened. Nothing happened like that. Nobody busted through the courthouse. It was it literally was a peaceful protest, to quote CNN. I can't believe I'm doing that, but it literally was. And that's the first thing that came into my mind was, are these guys provocateurs? But, they just sat there. And, somebody else brought it up to me today, Nick. I didn't even remember this. Maybe you do. Fog of War, I guess. But I guess Turtle Boy did acknowledge them at one point when he was on the microphone. So I don't remember that for some reason.
I mean, if they're there to take someone down, that they were there to take him down. As being the leader of that protest,
Definitely.
you take away the leader, the rest, it's going to take someone else to step up, who has the courage to step up in the group. You know what I mean? So it's like, if he does go away, that protest wouldn't be as successful, I don't think. And let's just say, it comes down the road, and there's the next court hearing. Who knows? A simple letter to someone's house saying, "Hey, we have your picture. You were at the Karen Reed rally. We're going to notify your work." Some people will just end it there and be like, "That's it. I'm not going again." Just because of just a simple letter, maybe no threats in it, but just something saying that we know you were there and you better watch out. Right. There could be no threat at all, but just know that we know you were there, and that alone.
How scary is it?
That alone can make somebody not go to something. Unfortunately,
I'll go one step further.
My wife texted me and she's like, "I'm kind of scared now that they have our pictures." I'm like, "Let them." I'm all over Google. It's not hard to find out anything about me or my where I live and stuff. So it's what's a picture gonna do? It doesn't intimidate me. I hope it doesn't intimidate the rest, unfortunately.
Right. And I'm just thinking, take it one step further. I mean, how intimidating is it when someone shows up at your door at 8:00 in the morning, to let you know, hey, we have these pictures. How many people would that scare off,
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's
you heard
interesting
Sean's
thought. I didn't even
story.
think it through that much,
Did you guys hear Sean's story
Go ahead.
yesterday?
Sorry, Kev.
He was talking to a friend who is
No.
retired law enforcement who went to one of the previous Karen Reed rallies, and somebody showed up where he has coffee and showed him a picture of him at the rally and says, "Are you sure you want to be with those guys?" or something to that effect. So
Yeah, I heard him say that yet last night, right?
yeah.
Right, and obviously Sean,
Yeah.
right? He's seen a lot in his life, being in law enforcement. So, you'd hope that people like him never back down, because you need people like him. I don't know the law. I'm no lawyer. I don't ever claim to be. I'm not law enforcement. I don't know the rules. But people like him are great to be able just to ask questions to. Hey, listen, I was at the rally. Could I get in trouble just for holding a sign? Things like that. And Sean's a very knowledgeable guy from what I've seen on your live and just his Facebook posts and everything. It's been an honor to be able to listen to him honestly about this case.
Sorry, guys.
All right, so we're actually I think we want to move on, Nick, just because
Thanks,
you've been a
got it.
great guest, and you're welcome back with us anytime. So let us know what's going with the raffle. Give me any information you can that I can link to it. And
Yep.
we're going to always keep covering this Karen Reed case, but we want to move on to we do have some other topics we want to get to.
You got it, man.
Hey.
I appreciate you guys having me on.
Nick, thanks for the water, dude. You're my hero, bro. Send me a Facebook friend request, brother. Let's keep in touch, okay?
All right, man. Have a good night, guys.
Take care,
All
buddy.
right, thanks, Nick.
Thanks.
All right, guys, that was Nick Rocco. Did he say he was a hair salon or just a hair salon supply? I forget. Not even sure
I don't
what
know.
town it's-
I think he said he'd stone him, so I'd love to pub his business, but I'm not really sure. I guess we could Google his name.
Stoneham, so he mustn't be a
Yeah.
native.
I say Stoneham sometimes. I'm a native. I say Hingham and Scituate, and there's a lot of strange names out here, buddy.
Oh yeah, they're all. We Haverhill, Worcester. We got a lot of them.
Worcester, yeah.
So
Quincy. People say it with a Z. No, it's Quincy.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, let's
We're a
let's
strange
put the
bunch.
Let's introduce the audience to our monster. I think I can do this. Put a picture up.
All right. Even the dog wants to be involved.
Yeah, the dog's not a fan of you, Wayne Chapman.
Yeah, and just for the commenters, so you know, just to paint the picture, the last thing on the protest, I promise, Kevin, that very last thing. There was some guys taking some pictures. They were not discreet about it, and there's Wayne right there, scumbag. And I decided, I'll just try and sit next to them to get out of the rain. It wasn't awkward because it was rainy as hell, and they were dry under a big overpass kind of looking thing where the registry of deeds was. And I was able to look over their shoulder, and they were flipping through pictures talking about who was who. And it's scary. It's scary to think that, a peaceful protest, are exercising just our First Amendment rights, that's guaranteed to us by God, not government and not stupid politicians, by God, would be interrupted like that. Or be in any way you would feel threatened by authorities is fucking strange. In any kind of real country, that would never happen. So it's deeply disturbing. And they want to take down Turtle Boy so bad. I can just tell. I
don't think they want to do anything legally to him because they don't want to turn him into a martyr. And Turtle Boy wants to be taken down because Turtle Boy knows that'll just kind of increase his power. So he's almost trying to provoke them. So they're going to leave him alone. But they want to intimidate anybody else that seems normal, especially law enforcement. I think that might speak out on their part, on the part of Karen Reed, or against the corruption that seems to be involved here. But speaking of monsters, let's look at this one here. Got him up on the screen. Now, this is Wayne Chapman. This is the main subject of Dave's book, Monster: The Life and Crimes of Wayne Chapman. And you don't get a sense of it here, but he's a big dude, but you do get a sense of his creepy eyes. So we're going to go into the roots of Wayne Chapman because he was born in Jamestown, New York, grew up there, and Dave McGrath here has spent a lot of time there. So there's a lot to tell in his story, but we're going to focus on that part of the story today. But let's just describe what you're looking at here when you see this. We're not seeing his whole body. So
All right, so that is Wayne Chapman's 1975 booking photo. That picture was taken at the Adult Correctional Institution in Cranston, Rhode Island, just about 20 minutes from where I sit right now. As he was booked in on sex crime charges, he had just been pulled over recently to that in Waterloo, New York, in the New York Thruway, trying to get from New York Metro to New York State, where he's from, up in Jamestown, as you adequately put a.
You still there?
Hey, Kev, can you still hear me?
You were gone for a few seconds. You seem to be back now. Can you hear me? All right, we'll get Dave back in a minute. He's sometimes has a spotty connection out there. He's in Providence. It must be a cell tower thing because it's only when he's on his phone. He seems to be usually fine when he's on his laptop, but that's currently at the shop. So Wayne Chapman, as soon as I see him, I'll let him. As soon as he gets back in, I'll let him back in. So Wayne Chapman is suspected in hundreds. He's coming back at hundreds of abductions and presumably murders. Okay, can you hear it, Dave?
Guys, I am so sorry. This is usually the time that I wake up for work, and my alarm rang and totally booted me off here. I apologize, but I'm not working tonight. A little bit of breaking news. I put in my 2 weeks notice today. I'm resigning from my job for a multitude of factors. And anybody who works in the system or works in law enforcement knows that it's the toughest job in America right now. It's the most thankless, most difficult job in the country. You don't get paid a ton of money. You work a lot of hours, and it was just time for me to be done, personally. And I'll talk much more about that in depth soon. But I've been doing it for a bit, and I think there's just so much more for me in the private sector, and I'm excited to get going on that. And you're right, Jack. Somebody was at my door, unfortunately. Imagine that. Imagine if they came to my door live while we're on air. That'd be awesome. I would live stream the hell out of that. That day's probably coming. That day's probably coming. So anyway,
yeah, you might be. Turtle Boy would be a martyr, but they might come after.
Yeah, I know. Whatever, bring it. And I don't even say that to be a tough guy. I could give a fuck less. So anyway, this is this booking photo was taken after the infamous traffic stop that I write about in depth in my book. So, he's found with a starter pistol, reels of child pornography, photos spread out on the dashboard. I mean, it's just a sick scene. The New York State Police took him in, and they sent out a teletype at that time. And Providence, Rhode Island police department took the teletype. Sex crime detective named Albert Mintz, who's appeared on this show in the past, shirtless in all of his glory, took the teletype and, said, hey, this is a local guy. He's got an address in Providence, 129 Linwood Avenue. Let me go down and see if I can find out more about this guy. I don't know how deep you want me to go there, Kev.
Sorry, this is a bad picture. This is the bread truck. This guy was. You've heard about the stereotypical creepy white van, but this guy actually drove a converted bread truck. I got to find a better picture. This is a small picture, so I'll get
that
off
picture
this.
is one of the few pictures that's available of it. It's amazing that you even have that one. And you'll notice on his bread truck here, he did drive a converted bread truck, and all this is creepy stereotype imaginable with that thing. And he actually had the windows cardboarded up so you couldn't see in. And that's something that I found out actually just recently reading through a police report. Somehow when I did this book, I tried to be so thorough in this book. And Susan, thank you so much for buying the book. I saw your comment. And you'll see in the book that I feel like almost I went overboard to try in some sense explain and over explain how I got to this point and why I think this. And it was hard for me to pull the reins back on that, if I could put it that way, and still, I looked through my notes. I'm like, I fucking missed that. I'm like, cardboard. If you ever see a car driving down the road and it's a creepy raper van like that we all have that in our mind of how they look, and the windows are cardboarded up like that, I feel like that's a detail that I shouldn't have missed. But I'm learning here. So anyway, yeah,
That's
that's
okay.
the van. Go ahead.
We want to start, like, sometimes a good story starts at the beginning. So it's not always. In fact, a lot of times
Right.
I like those ones that start in the middle. And your book kind of starts in the middle at a very appropriate place with Minsk.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mintz. Al Mintz talking to his kids and showing them a photo of Wayne Chapman and realizing that his kids had encountered him, which is an
Yes.
incredible. That'll make him. That's a great place to start the book. But
Yeah.
we kind of want to go back to the beginning for tonight's episode, to the roots of this monster. What year was he born? What was his parents like? Tell us about the region he lived in. Tell us about some of the early signs of the trouble, the monster that he was.
Yeah. Well, Chapman was born in November of '47, in Jamestown. Is this too much light? I'm trying to get the right amount of light here. That's probably too much light, huh?
That's a little bit of light's okay. So that where you kind of had. That's
go.
good. That's good. That's good. Right. That's
I'm
probably as good
I'm
as
on
you
my
get.
back deck with the beautiful scenery of Providence behind me. Sorry, guys.
There you go.
So he's born in November '47. His father's a local, well-known local guy. He's a World War II veteran, fought with 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines in World War II in Guadalcanal. I got his dad's service records. His father was a Purple Heart recipient. War hero, as many guys were coming home in the late 1940s from World War II, just like some of your our commenters' grandfathers, and great grandfathers. So, the old man was a legit guy, but unfortunately, like many veterans, my father included, he came home with a drinking problem. So he's pretty cruel. I think a lot of people's, I don't know which side you fall on here, and I don't want to go too deep into this discussion, but I think a lot of people, they see these guys who end up being serial pedophiles and child abusers. They believe that they were abused themselves, and okay, this guy's just continuing the cycle. And there was absolutely no evidence of that. His brothers, he had 4 of them. None of them ever came forward and said anything about any kind of child abuse in the home outside of their father being cruel with his hands. There was no sexual abuse. And I'm very much a nature guy and the nature versus nurture debate. And many of these guys I write about in this book, none of them had any history of sexual abuse at all. Their parents weren't abusive sexually towards them. And they all had siblings, and none of them ever came forward with any allegations of sexual abuse, but yet they were serial pedophiles, including Nathaniel Barjona, and who I write about, who's sort of Wayne Chapman's right-hand man, if you will. And Charles Pearson, the other main, sort of protagonist in the book. Not a lot's known about his background. I just don't know enough about Pearson's background, so I really couldn't. And there's Barjona there, and a 300-pound serial pedophile who terrorized boys in the North Shore in the 1970s, terrorized young boys in the 1990s in Montana, where he ended up just.
Yeah, this guy was 6'4", like 400 pounds, right? When he reached adulthood.
Yeah, 6'4", 400 pounds, straggly beard. There's him unshaven, but he had 2 different color eyes. Wayne Chapman was
But just a terrifying thing for a child to see. And Wayne was about 6'3", right?
Wayne was like 6'2.5", 6'3", walked with a limp, had a very pronounced scar over his right eye. These guys were guys that you would, you'd recognize. They stand out from a crowd. So, but again, back to, the childhood with Chapman, I couldn't find any evidence of sexual abuse. In fact, nobody in his family went on to offend against children. I did find my last trip into Jamestown, which would have been 2019, just about pre-COVID. I did find one of his nephews, who was the son of his brother. Just at the time I was there, he was getting a life sentence for, he was getting a 30-year sentence for crimes against children. So there was a Chapman who did offend, but with Chapman's case, with the older Wayne, it was a total nature thing. I really do think some of these guys are just born this way. And
let me just interrupt there briefly there, Dave. Yeah, I mean, so I've done a lot of research into this, and when you're a psychopath, you are born with a brain malfunction. Malfunction might not even be the right word, because nature seems to have wanted us 2% of the population to actually be born that way, because there's certain advantages to have a brain where you don't feel much fear in most cases. You don't feel any empathy, so you're not hindered by empathy. and that can come in handy. That can make you a chieftain, a warrior,
Sure.
a surgeon. If there's too many of those types within a population, the population won't form the proper social bonds to come together as a tribe. That's why we have empathy. That's why we have the ability to care about us.
That's
so yeah,
so
it's
true.
pretty constant across the world, across human populations, that 2% are born with a psychopathic brain. Now, not all of them are going to become monsters, and maybe even most of them don't, because most of them, they go through life kind of hiding themselves, but they don't develop a sexual obsession like a lot of these guys do.
Right.
So they just may be a rock star or a banker or whatever. But if they are inclined to develop a sexual obsession, they're not hindered by any empathy when it comes to developing that kind of thing.
Right.
And I just want, as far as Wayne, there was the one story, I think he told this to Al Mintz. I'm curious to hear what you think about this, because I don't believe it. But he did try to suggest that he was sexually abused by 3 teens or something when he was a little kid, 3 teenage girls.
Yeah. And I did put that story in the book, and I think I spent about 2 minutes on it. I think I called it bullshit, and I just kind of moved on. And it's so funny that Wayne Chapman and Barjona would go to the ends of the world to tell people that they barely knew each other, but yet they both had the same story about how they sort of they were both gang raped by, like, the neighbor girls, and the girls just couldn't keep their hands off them. And it's all bullshit. In fact, everything I could find told me exactly the opposite. In fact, Chapman had molested his own brother. He had actually molested his own brother and when he was an early teenager, and his brother was a little younger. So the only sexual abuse that was in that household was Wayne Chapman onto the younger kids. And the same thing with Barjona. He tried to strangle, when he was in first grade, he tried to strangle his female neighbor. That was his first offense in life. And these guys were just born, like you said, and you put it very eloquently, and I couldn't do it any better than that. They were born with that malfunction in their brain. They're psychopaths. But they just happen to have sexual obsessions, and those sexual obsessions, unfortunately, were for small male adolescent, boys.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like many of these guys don't have any kind of a proven history of being seriously abused, certainly not sexually abused. Barjona has no history of that. Ted Bundy has no history of that. Just BTK had no history of that. I mean, it's kind of it is true that someone can become a sociopath through a substantial amount of abuse. And an example might be the character, I forget his name, the basis for the Netflix series, The Good Nurse. This was a guy that was seriously abused as a kid, and he seems to have developed God complex, which he only expressed by killing, harmless people in the hospital, but it made him feel like a god.
Right. I was talking to John Douglas. I'm sorry to interrupt you, and I'm sure
that's great.
the people who are listening to this right now and watching this are going to know who John Douglas are. They're true crime fans. He's a former FBI agent who worked in the behavioral science unit. The series on Netflix called Mindhunter is based on his work. And he's really even more well known now for just being a prolific true crime writer. He wrote the definitive book on BTK. I beg you guys to read it. But me and him have connected over the years to talk about my work, and I really just pick his brain the most I can about Chapman and Barjona. And, he told me a story about old Nazi war criminals. And this is the best analogy I found for Chapman and Barjona. And he was telling me how he just thought that they were missing something, like they were unfinished. Their souls were just unfinished. They just didn't have the capacity to care about anybody. And that's all I can really tell you when it comes to Chapman and Barjona and these guys. They just didn't have the capacity to care about these little kids. They throw them away like toys. They'd rape a boy, they'd leave him for dead. They'd tie a boy to a tree, they'd set him on fire just to leave their mark on him. They'd see a boy. They had no impulse control either.
That's the classic mark of a psychopath.
Right,
That's one of the many, having no impulse control.
And I wrote that a lot in my book. I hammered that point with Chapman because he would grab boys in broad daylight. He had no thoughts of, I might get caught. There's adults around. Maybe the police are around. He'd grab a boy in broad daylight. He would go out into the middle of the woods, and he would spread out porno magazines, and he would wait for the boys to come by and see them and show an interest, and he would pounce on that, and this is how deviant this guy was, and this is how little he cared about anything else other than sexually abusing young boys. And that Douglas really made that great analogy with the Nazi war criminal there at that time, and that really stuck with me. Is that we're just talking about people that I don't think we have the capacity to understand, with our simple minds,
We can though. And actually, when I look at how their minds work, it seems comprehensible to me, to be honest. We'll go into it some other episode. I don't think I want to go into too deeply here, but just quickly, there are certain impulses that we have that are natural. So, for instance, the impulse, or the desire to dominate. You get a rush of good feeling if you're a kid and you beat somebody in a sport, right? Or if you beat them in a fight, or if you beat them in an argument, or whatever, you feel a rush of dopamine while you're in the fight, and then a rush of serotonin, which makes you feel good afterwards. It's normal. Nature wants us to feel that way. But in a normal brain, those things develop brakes on the system. So as you get adolescence, you're also your sense of empathy is expanding and becoming more sophisticated. So you know not to dominate someone in a way that you don't take any pleasure from harming somebody. So if you have those normal feelings to want to dominate, but it's unhindered by any sense of empathy, then that part of you that could become a monster does. And I think that's a big part of what happens. Does that make sense? Or
it's funny. I was at that makes perfect sense. I think you're dead on, man. And it's funny. I was at the protest and I saw Turtle Boy's camera guy who watches the show. His name is Richie, and what a fucking great guy. And he was like, "Hey, man, can you do a video?" He asked me to come over and let's talk about a bunch of things. Karen Reed case, this case. He's like, "I know you work on a bunch of missing boys. Let's talk about it." And unfortunately, in this case, what you had was two psychopaths. Well, three psychopaths, really, when you add in Charlie Pierce, who was probably maybe the worst of all three. I go back and forth, to be honest with you. But when you have these three, and then you have the element of the money making that came down the pike eventually, and that carrot that was out there that, hey, not only can I do this, but I can film this and I can sell this and I can move this and I can connect with other people who can get me other boys, and then then we can push more of it, and I can get better camera equipment. I can get more gas for my car, so I can get out to this area that's good for trolling, and then I can get from Providence to Lawrence, where my other crazy friends, pedophile friends, tell me that there's a pool, and it just goes on, and really, the crux of the story, and I know I'm getting off track, is, yeah, you had these psychopaths acting in isolation, but once the system, the machine got behind them, that child pornography producing machine, that's when the fire got ignited, and that's how you have all these missing kids. None of this, me and you wouldn't be talking right now. We wouldn't know each other. You'd be a random guy. I'd be a random guy. Nobody in this audience would be listening to us had those events not been set in motion. Those boys would still be alive, So that's really the crux of the story is, okay, we had these monsters, but there was also a machine that they were feeding, and that's the scariest part. To me, Kevin, that's the scariest part of the whole scenario.
And that's the part that we want to see proved, or at least have the ball moved further up the field in the series Outer Demons, which is based on your work and also the investigations of Melanie Perkins. Melanie told me some interesting stuff today also that moved the needle a little bit for me in another regard. I don't want to go into the details again because I'm always going to leave that for Melanie to decide what to talk about. But I'm always interested in understanding, because we were just talking about the profiles of these guys, what makes them tick, So one of the things that in the whole Wayne Chapman thing, without getting into the whole Andy Puglisi story here, but so he's arrested in 1976, about a month after Andy went missing. He's widely presumed to have been at least one of the abductors of Andy Puglisi. He had confessed to another murder of Louison, right, in Brockton. So we don't know for sure whether he actually killed people or how many, but that people have tried to create the impression that he was all about, it was misplaced love. He just wanted to love people, but that's really turns out to be wrong. And when I looked at this too, now it was reported, I think, in the Boston Globe series on him. Now he raped two boys in the same woods that Andy Puglisi was taken from the year before. And the way those stories were described was that he then walked the boys out of the woods and basically just let them go. And so you're left wondering, like, so what happened? Why did he let these guys go? And then a year later, he killed Andy. And there were some people speculated he didn't mean to kill Andy, that he just got rough and the kid, and that's possible. But Melanie gave me a whole different take on it today, that he may not have been intentionally letting the boys go. So, but we'll wait till Melanie tells that story sometime. I want to go back, just if we could, a little bit more to the roots. Tell us about the first crime that we know of involving Wayne Chapman.
First crime would have been 1967, Oil City, Pennsylvania. Well, he committed a couple of crimes in Jamestown, low-end stuff, corrupting the morals of minors. Not a lot available paperwork-wise that I could find, but the charges were there. I was able to find old newspaper clippings on them. I do still have the clippings. He did commit crimes before the age of 18. But juvenile rules, things like that, I just couldn't get a hold of him. So eventually,
what was the first time you mentioned he molested his brother? How old was he when he did that?
I think he was, again, it's in the book, the exact ages and everything. I think, he was 11 and his brother may have been 6 or 7.
So it was, but that's important. So it was pre-pubescent.
Oh yeah. This guy came out of the womb a pedophile.
Yeah.
Just like I came out of the womb. And again, a lot of people have come after me for this line of thinking, because a lot of people say, oh, well, you're telling me it's a sexual orientation, then you're covering for him. You don't understand. Nobody despises these child abusers more than I do. I was a victim of childhood abuse. The whole reason why I did this book and I work in this line of work, and I'm even sitting here right now, is because of things that happened to me when I was a child. Nobody will ever cover. Nobody goes after these guys harder than I do. Read my book. I went to people's door all over the country. I've nearly been arrested for tracking down 95-year-old men where they live. I'm not covering for them. What I'm telling you is all of my research points towards nurture doesn't help. If you grow up abused, and especially sexually abused, there's a very fair chance that that's all you're going to know, and you're going to go on to be an abuser yourself. But there are so many cases and so many so many case studies you can do of men who had absolutely no prior history of sexual abuse on them, who ended up being serial abusers, like Wayne Chapman. And yes, he did start abusing children at a young age, his own brothers. That is verified. His brothers have come out and said that. Chapman has admitted that in court papers. So yeah, he was prepubescent, right out of the womb, offending against children. Yes.
I mean, it's just so he left. Oh, now he also he actually got an award for perfect church attendance.
Now this guy, he was
proud of, apparently.
He was very proud of it. He had a weird childhood and I talked to many people he went to high school with. He did graduate high school. He was Mendoza line IQ. He was not a smart guy, and that comes up over and over again in the book because, at certain points in his criminal career, he did smart things, which, I chalk up to being well coached, not smart, because the guy was not smart at all. I mean, book smart wise, he was not. He had an IQ of around 70 to 80, which is borderline mentally retarded. And but he was very involved in the church when he was a kid. His parents were very involved in the church. He helped out every weekend with bake sales. He helped out. Women would come in and do their shopping in the food pantry. He'd walk out with their bags and everything. Like he was known as a good kid in the neighborhood, which doesn't surprise me at all. All of the BTK was the president of his congregation, Kevin. I mean, these guys, one thing they are good at is being chameleons. I mean, they can hide it like you wouldn't believe it. Now, Chapman actually wasn't
the original work on psychopathy is called The Mask of Sanity. It was written in around 1947. The Mask of Sanity. And it's still the main work on psychopathy. I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's probably the best piece of research you will find on psychopathy was written 6 decades ago, and it's called The Mask of Sanity. And Chapman wore that sometimes. Now, there were plenty of people who I've spoken to who will say, listen, this guy showed up to school with 2 different shoes on. He never brushed his teeth. He never washed his hair. It was eternally greasy. Like, he had no concept of hygiene. He couldn't keep a job in his late teens and early 20s once he got bounced from the house because his father, Arthur Chapman, basically just said, I don't want and he called him a queer. And again, this is what his words, not mine. Although that word is said every day, LGBTQ, I believe the Q is for queer, and many people say it's not offensive. So I don't feel like I have to apologize. And he would say, I don't want the queer around. I do not want the queer around, And his parents thought of him as a good kid. Now, his mother, he was a mama's boy, and his mother would cover for him. And she had a massive pill addiction, and she was always fucked up on pills. But, for the most part, to the outside world, Wayne Chapman looked like a good kid who maybe he was going places in life at one point.
Well, he looked like an oddball, I think, probably, right? I mean, and even just some of that stuff can be a sign of psychopathy too, although obviously it's not. There's a lot that goes into it. But being, going to school dressed the wrong way, one of the problems with a psychopath is, on the one hand, yes, they can wear masks, so the ones that are good can become something else and fit in and even dominate a situation, especially because they're also very good at being manipulative. However, because that kind of normal, natural social connection, that can be odd too, and
yeah, and he didn't have girlfriends growing up or anything like that. He didn't go to the school dance or anything. And in fact, he talks a lot, in later interviews about how he would start skipping school around 6th, 7th grade because, again, he was just eternally picked on, which I'm not condoning, but I mean, he was a social outcast. Nobody could predict that he'd end up being one of the worst pedophiles that the world's ever seen, and by the numbers, he literally is. But people thought of him as a nice kid. You probably wouldn't have been too upset if your daughter brought him home, and just to think about that now, all these decades later, knowing what we know about him.
Yeah. So his first crime, I know, the one that he was caught on, his first violent crime, when he ended up in prison in Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah, he ended up in a work camp doing hard labor for 1.5 years. I in the picture section of the book, if you have the hard copy, I was able to actually find the handwritten register where Chapman actually signed in. He signed in January of '68, I believe, if I'm not wrong. Somebody will fact check me. And he went to jail for corrupting the morals of a minor. He grabbed a young boy and promised him a paper route. He said, hey, meet me here tomorrow at this time. And this is in Pennsylvania, so it's a little bit of a drive from Jamestown, not too far, but he had gotten away from his hometown because he was causing a lot of heat. He was grabbing kids back home and touching them and doing things he shouldn't do. And the heat was coming on him, and he had to get out. And once he got his driver's license, as I write in the book, that's when things really opened up for him because he could travel. He was becoming mobile, which would become so important later on, in the book. So once he got mobile, he started going into places like Ohio, crossing the border into Canada to go into the gay bookstores, and he would start to consume child pornography because it was so very, especially in Toronto and Montreal specifically, that's where really the obsession started for him, 17, 18 years old, looking at these images. And he was starting to understand that, hey, there's people out there like me that really like this stuff, and there's a market for it. And here I am, and that's where I really think things started to click for him. And that's when, he started to, it was just taking over him. And he grabbed that boy, he promised him a paper route. And that boy is the one that he raped in the woods. The kid ended up getting away from the police. He ran out into the street after getting caught in the woods and alerted a civilian. A civilian got involved. Police caught up with him. And I wrote in the book, because this is something that really fascinated me, is that Chapman didn't go home. He saw the boy the morning prior, promised him the paper route, told him to meet him the next day. Chapman slept right there in front of those woods where he's going to meet the boy all night. It was in the middle of July. It was really hot. He was sweating and no AC. And this is how dedicated this guy was to raping kids. I mean, he didn't bother going home. He sat right there. It's like, hey, I'll see you tomorrow. All right, I didn't go home and eat dinner. I waited right there for you. And this is how dedicated this guy was. He was just...
Sorry to interrupt you, Dave, but one of the things about psychopaths, too, is that they've studied, and this is also about dopamine and generally. So the psychopath is low naturally in dopamine. So if he's in an unstimulated state, he's kind of like a zombie a little bit. He's lifeless. He's depressed. The most amount of
So true.
dopamine you get is actually when you're on the hunt. Okay, it actually comes from the hunt, not from the killing moment, not from the raping moment. It comes from being on the hunt. So when he was in the woods doing that stuff for days, that was his happy time. That was the happiest he was, actually.
So right.
I mean, yeah.
And Kevin, what does every drug addict tell you? It wasn't even about the drugs anymore. It was about scoring the drugs, right? That was my main thing, you know, was when I was meeting my drug dealer and getting it, knowing I had it in my pocket, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you're right, and many people later. In fact, I talked to John Cameron, who is a detective in the book, who was not a Massachusetts detective. He was a Great Falls, Montana detective, and he was investigating Barjona. He found the letters between Barjona and Chapman. He said, "I better get out to Massachusetts and interview this Chapman character." And he didn't think Chapman was human. And you're right, he might have been in one of those states where he was almost like a zombie, because I remember the discussion. He said, "I don't believe that." When I talked to this guy, I didn't believe he was human. When he talked, it sounded like there was a robot inside him, just mouthing the words. You know, he was like, I came away from that thinking this guy is an animal. Like literally, he's an animal. And that's true. I mean, he was an animal. He was almost subhuman.
It's a different kind of thing. And I actually, you know, one of the things I put together a video months back based on my studies of psychopaths, and everything that I listed there was based on the actual listed characteristics of a psychopath. But there was one that I added to the list that is my own. And you guys that are out there that look at psychopaths, if you look at them, for instance, the Long Island serial killer caught last week. This is, to me, what I saw from studying psychopaths, looking at images, watching interviews of them in the police station, and also watching even psychopaths that are non-criminal, such as Dr. James Fallon, who wrote the book, who discovered he himself was a psychopath by looking at the MRIs. But I call it the alien within. When you look at these guys, they look like somebody, and I don't mean an alien like for ET alien. I mean, it's a human being. It's like you're a soul that has somehow wandered into a body that's not yours. And it's a really strange effect. But when you look at the physical mannerisms, you can do this without even listening to what they're saying. It's amazing. So last week, as soon as the Long Island serial killer was caught, I went to the tape to see, does this guy show that effect? Oh my God! In the first 30 seconds of that interview, you know, it's like his face is kind of turning out of joint with what he's trying to say. I mean, it's incredible. You really see, you know, you think of Jeffrey Dahmer walking without moving his arms, and you find it in almost every case. And in somebody like a Dr. James Fallon, it's there too. It's just more subtle because they've learned how to mask it better. But they never really, it looks like someone that is not comfortable embodying their own skin.
True. Yeah, I mean, it's just such a dead-on assessment, Kev. You talk like someone who's read a thing or two. And it's so true in this case with these two guys, specifically Chapman. And I think Barjona was different. Barjona was almost like a guy who got off on the fear. He got off on terrifying people. You know what I mean? And I don't think it was that way with Chapman. I think he was just so driven by that sexual thing towards kids, you know. And I think Barjona was different. Well, he was a pedophile, no doubt. But he got, you know, this story I wrote in the book of him taking the taxi to his victim's house just so they would see him outside. And that was enough for him, you know. All he wanted was for them to see him. And then he got right back in, you know. And that's 100% true story. He did that to the little boy in Oxford, Massachusetts. And
he had absolutely no control over his impulses, at least at that point in his life. And that was, and he wasn't young. I mean, he was relatively young, but it's not like he was a kid at that point, and he had been in and out of trouble. So, just one more thing. I want to go back. We can go into other topics or other aspects of this, but while we're still on the roots of the monster, you told me an incredible story about a week ago that almost seems hard to believe. Not obviously, I do believe it. So this was where Wayne learned the technique to trick kids into the woods by using the lost dog technique. Where did he learn that?
So this is another thing that didn't make the book, because I didn't learn about it until my later research after the book came out, because I just never stop. I'm so obsessed, you know, and you know, I'm almost on like the autism spectrum. Once I get a hold of something, I'm like a dog, you know, I can't let it go, you know. And that served me well in certain portions of my life and not been good in other portions, but I read this in a court filing from the 1970s where somebody asked Wayne Chapman about the dog technique. And Wayne Chapman lured his victims by promising them, or excuse me, by preying on their impulses, and their impulses were to help a stranger in need who needed to find his dog. And he would go
And
up
that's
to
how he
boys
got
in
the
the
kid. That's how we got the boys in Lawrence. So yeah, go ahead.
right. That's how he got Andy Puglisi allegedly. And what happened is he grabbed a boy in Pennsylvania. What we're talking about, and this boy, while he was raping him, the little boy said to him, "The last guy who did this to me just told me that he needed me to help him find his dog." Imagine this kid's luck. And this is how rampant it was for adults to sexually abuse kids in these days, that day and age. That this had actually happened to this boy before. And he had actually shared with Chapman that the last time this happened to me, the guy just asked me to help him find his dog. From there on out, Wayne Chapman used that same exact guy's ruse with every kid, his lost dog. And he would say, "I'm missing my poodle. I have my 2 daughters at home. They're going to be so sad." He'd pick the one boy that he wanted to abuse because he had a type, and he would isolate him with him. He would tell the other boy to go the other way. We'll meet up here or whatever. And that's how he would do it. And he learned that, and he told that story. You don't have to listen to Dave. Wayne Chapman is the one who told that story. And I found it at court filing. And I was so chilled to the bone by that. I think I contacted you immediately, and I just said, "Oh my God."
It's just amazing. It's amazing to think that some poor kid's luck was that bad. Although you always sort of looked, is there some other common denominator that increased the chances? So just for instance, if you lived in, like, so with the Andy Puglisi story, Melanie reports that the police told her that there were at least five known predators working the pool that summer. So you could have a situation where, like you said, these predators kind of flock to certain areas that are very understandably vulnerable targets. There's a lot of kids. It's near a highway. So maybe this kid's, unknown to him, was in one of those kind of areas where there were multiple predators targeting and looking.
Right. And maybe that's true. I just think that, and there's been other kids, adults now that I've spoken to who have told me that they've been abused by multiple people. And, a lot of these kids were the type of kids who were kind of in a tough situation. Maybe they didn't have a lot of adult oversight. Maybe they didn't have fathers at home. They were really one woman I talked to, she was ecstatic that her son was getting involved in the 4-H club in Providence in the 1970s. Mm-hmm. Unbeknownst to her, there was no real 4-H club. It was Wayne Chapman's club to abuse children. So, I mean, that's what these kids were. These kids were, underserved, from tough communities, single parent household, no parent household, in the foster system, especially when we talk about the Revere, which we'll get to, the Revere brothel, essentially, that they were running with little boys. I mean, a lot of those kids were foster kids. So who were just John Does, who were just no parents, no family, out there on the run. And they were taken and abused.
And there were no, you go back to the 70s, the families are much larger. So instead, nowadays people have 1 or 2 kids. Back then you're talking about 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 kids.
Right.
And the goal for the parents is just to get them the hell out of the house. There's no video games. So if you can get your kid off, if someone's going to take your kid off to a camp, you're like, thank you.
Sure. Listen, I work 12 hours a day. I really need my kid to go to camp. Oh, you're telling me it's free? Good. I don't have any money. What time will he be home? Yeah. That's the way it was, right? Unbeknownst to you, your son is being taken out to, Lincoln Woods State Park here in Lincoln, Rhode Island, and he's being taken into a van and sexually abused, which is 100% what happened. There's one boy who Chapman would take him off Interstate 95 out here in West Warwick, Rhode Island, multiple occasions, destroyed that kid's life, destroyed all these kids' lives. A whole generation of kids from this area where I stand right now, absolutely destroyed by this one absolute monster. And that's what the story is, more than anything, is that.
Right. So guys, let me address this to the people watching the show. I'm exhausted. I don't mind going on. But let's see if we can just get a couple of people to comment in chat to say we're still here, we're still listening, keep going. Then maybe you'll give us a little bit of energy because nobody's commented much for the last few minutes. So if you're there and you're watching, give us a comment. Say Dave, thanks for all your work. Good luck in the rest of your investigation. Say anything. Tell us how you feel about the Jaylen Brown signing. Patriots open camp today, so
I think I'm gonna take the kids to Patriots camp tomorrow. That's my plan for tomorrow. So
it's a great,
close.
Crafted
Great
a fantastic job of turning that into camp into a place to take the kids.
For those of you who are in a different age group, I mean, do you remember what this was in the 1990s before Brady? Compared to what it is now. Yeah, Luann, I see your comment. It's it is gross, that's for sure. But I would rather be grossed out than have somebody like you not know the story. I would rather you know the story.
And actually, that's a really good. That's a really interesting thing that I like to talk about once in a while too. Is like, why would people be interested in this? And and I've kind of gone through my own experience. So I was never into true crime, and the reason is because I always found it. I don't know. I'd rather watch an episode of Seinfeld and laugh. To me, it's it's just dark and disturbing to find out, to think about what the victims went through. And I've also, I've noticed over the people that I've seen that are into true crime or into even just watching a tragic thing going on TV. My mother, if there's something tragic going on, a boy gets killed by the police or something, she watches this endlessly for a week. She won't miss the funeral and the wake and the speeches and this and that. Now, my mother is one of the more empathetic people that I know. She's someone that cares about people. So I'm like, well, why are you into this stuff? And it's the same thing with the true crime audience. I think the people that are into true crime tend to be the most empathetic. And the only thing I can think of is because they're conditioned to connect with people through in that kind of way. So they commiserate with the victims. But for me, because I find it kind of an uncomfortable experience. So what's made it possible for me to go through these is the mystery. So if there's I prefer unsolved cases.
Unsolved, yeah, agreed.
Or even if it's a solved case, I want to use it to understand. So I'm engaging that intellectual part of my mind and trying to put the emotional part into the background. So these are definitely going to be some disturbing cases that Dave will be talking about for all throughout our investigation, our series into this. And we do other stuff on the channel with true crime, a lot of it. And they're disturbing cases, but you shouldn't feel guilty for wanting to hear about it. I think just turn off that little emotional part that's bothering you and try to think about, to learn something from it.
I'm the exact opposite. I grew up obsessed with true crime. And when I was selling this book, when I talked to the people who eventually published it, they were like, nobody's going to read this book. People who like true crime, they don't want to hear anything about kids, child murder, never mind child rape. Everyone told me this is death. You should write, this should be your 10th book. This should be a book that you write after you've done so well that it's just your pet project and you put it out and nobody cares. And I didn't agree with that. I didn't agree with that at all. I thought that this story was so enduring, Kevin, that it would grab people. And I turned out to be right because the book has been an incredible success. And you just see it right now. Look at what the number one movie in the world is right now. The Sound of Freedom, about child trafficking, beat Indiana Jones. People have such a thirst. And because I think at the core of the story, more than anything, it's about corruption. It's really about corruption above all. And how these guys were able to operate is because corrupt institutions allowed them to operate. There's no difference between this book and the Karen Reed case, in my opinion. It's all the same thing. It's all just people covering for each other, telling half truths, lying, letting people get away with things. So the one thing I really do, and I don't pat myself on the back often, I really don't, is in my heart, I knew I was right, that people would want to read the book and they would think the story was, it is repulsive, but I think they understand, like, okay, you know what? It's necessary. You got to know about this stuff.
And it's not just about corruption. It's about bad thinking. And what happens is I did this a little bit of it. I talked about it yesterday. There are people, good people that do not believe in monsters. And because of that, right now, sitting somewhere is a child
Oh
that
yeah.
is being victimized that doesn't have to be, because the system isn't protecting him, because the people that are in the positions to impact him don't believe in
Don't believe
monsters. They and listen, there are often, I'm not one of those guys saying you got a criminal, throw away the key. No, there are criminals that have been conditioned to crime or made mistakes, and those people are certainly people that can be fixed. But for that percentage, those type of, especially any kind of sexual based crime, violent crime, those people can't be fixed. And if your ideology, or your, in some cases, maybe even your religion tells you, all right, this person, you pray enough for this guy, then you should give him another chance, or you rehabilitate him. And, we've talked about this. We're going to be filming next Tuesday. One of the locations is at Bridgewater State Hospital, which is, you spent a lot of time there. You kind of, in some ways, grew up there in the back there, fishing at the pond. But we've talked about it. This for me, I was first started investigating these cases before I knew you. Like, this is college for monsters. This is monster college. This is where these guys met and connected and traded techniques. And, I mean, it's just, that's because the people that were running that institution, they're the ones that are in charge of the monsters, and they don't understand them. And they let them out.
They got PhDs in that place, PhDs in how to commit crimes. And what happened afterwards? More boys went missing, more boys were murdered, more people got away with it. And nobody pays for it. Nobody ever gets held to account. That's why I always say the DA in the Karen Reed case will probably get promoted, because nobody ever gets the comeuppance for the shit that gets dumped on everybody. And in this case, it was these two monsters. And of course, statistically, there's a Wayne Chapman in your neighborhood. Just by the numbers, there is one. And he's probably your kid's basketball coach. He's your preacher. He's your guidance counselor. He might be the chief of endocrinology at your local hospital. We know that. He could be the headmaster at the most prestigious school in your town, because they've all done that. Or they could be your kid's history teacher, as we've learned recently in Duxbury. Statistically, he's in your neighborhood right now. So, and just to answer all the commenters, because they're so great, and I really appreciate everybody commenting.
I'm inviting Penny on if you see her comment there, Dave.
Yes, absolutely. I am very interested in the murder of the Swedish nanny, and one day I'll tell you one case that really interests me now, because it hits home. A woman that my wife used to work with. My wife works at a hospital. Her mother disappeared without a trace. And her name is Sandra Crispo in Abington, Massachusetts. If anybody wants to comment who knows about this story, it hits very close to home for me, because my wife actually knows her daughter. And I actually went to high school with her son. And this woman disappeared 5 years ago without a trace. Nobody's heard from her. Police have absolutely no leads. You will hear nothing on the story. And I'm really considering that for my next book. I think there's a lot there. So it was in Hanson. Yes, thank you, Ben. And Lena, her daughter, is friends with my wife. So I have a lot of personal connections to that case. And I think it could be another one where there's some corruption involved. But I'm so far down the path that I got to just stop. And Cleo, Johnny Gosh too. I believe Johnny Gosh was taken. Johnny Gosh was the quintessential sex ring case. I mean, he was child trafficked. I don't think there's.
That's the newspaper kid, right?
Yeah, the newspaper kid. Yep.
And Boardman.
Ben, get connected with me, man. If you know Lana, get connected with me. I'd love to talk to you more, buddy.
Just checking through the comments.
Everybody knows Lana. Well, if you know Lana, you might know my wife, Ben. We might know each other too. I don't know, buddy, but I'd love to get connected with you, because I think there's so much more to that story.
Yeah, that is a big story. I've had other friends of mine who are in law enforcement and want me to take that one on. So I looked into it a lot. Maybe
you looked into Sandra Crispo?
No, the nanny one.
Okay. Please do. Your daughter, if you're Christine, your daughter went to high school with Lana, then what? She went to Quincy High School, Christine? Sorry, I'm talking to the commenters here. I apologize, Cameron.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. Just reading through.
I thank you guys. I do appreciate. I do plan to do it. I just am so deep down the rabbit hole with this one. I do have to stop myself at some point and say, I'm probably never going to solve this Chapman story. Maybe I should give it up and go on to something else. Or maybe take a year break and do something else. So I do plan to do it, Christine. I really do. I'm going to look into it hard, and it's just incredible in this day and age of facial recognition. And we can, like I said earlier, you can find the grandmother who was smoking the Marlboro Red outside of outside the Capitol building 8 months later, but you can't find a woman who disappeared off the face of the planet in a little town in Hanson, Massachusetts. So I just don't understand it, and the family has absolutely no answer. So,
Of course, they can't find the person who laid the pipe bomb down outside the Capitol the night
of course not.
before. And
That's right.
two of
That's
them
right.
in front of both party headquarters and in the most surveilled place in the world. But anyways, here's the thing. One of the things that people might be looking at this and considering, for instance, the subjects of Dave's work is these cases took place in the 70s. And so, we're hearing about how all these people got let go by Bridgewater State Hospital or by the court system or various things. And you might say, well, that's ancient history. But then again, look at what's going on in South Boston. And we don't know the details of that, but you got those 4 kids who are in the house where it looks like the firefighter described it as men dressed as women because that automatically sets it up as a transgender issue, and they become a protected class. And so apparently the house was surrounded with drug and sexual paraphernalia. Now, this is not anti-trans or anything like that, but because they're afraid to damage that, again, you're protecting, you're throwing kids to the wind. And those 4 kids, what happens to them? And what happens to other kids in that situation? Then it just gets ignored. And that's the problem. That's the problem. No one's saying that different type of people aren't eligible to raise kids. We're not saying that, but you can't, if you're so eager to protect a certain class from having their reputation harmed, that you're willing to throw kids' lives away like that and leave them in abusive situations.
Right.
That's why monsters are enabled. That's why we have monsters,
And the craziest part of that whole story is that Boston police basically saying Boston Fire is lying, and everybody's pointing the finger each way at each other, and nobody's refereeing it. And the communist mayor of Boston is just more interested in submitting an enemies list to the police department to go take those people down. So we'll never get the true story there, and you can't go after it, unfortunately, because then you just bashing the gay community, which sounds eerily similar to the 1977 Revere sex ring, where you put 24 men on trial. And for tons of boys being abused and being sold all around the country and destroyed forever, and all of a sudden you're going after the gay community. So it's tough, man. It's tough.
And we don't know what the truth is, and that really ties into the Karen Reed case. I think the public there's a maybe a zeitgeist or an instinct that something is being covered up, and so they want to. People are out there and they want to express themselves. They don't trust the institutions anymore, and I think there's a lot of reasons that they shouldn't. And so certainly in the case when it's whether it's in the South Boston case or other, and we're not trying to throw aspersions at anybody, and we want the truth. So maybe there is a true story in that with those 4 kids, and they were. It was basically Leave It to Beaver with transgender parents. I'm not saying it's not. I don't know, but
right.
There's a fear that they're going to bury the truth so they won't harm those transgender communities, and that the Boston Globe is certainly not going to report on it. Channel 5 is certainly not going to report on it. Channel 4, Channel 7, they aren't going to report on these things because it's not part of their agenda. And I think that's what really disturbs us. I am not a conservative. I'm a rabid moderate. I believe I'm pro-choice. I'm pro this. I'm pro whatever. I don't care. I'm pro-freedom.
So am I.
I'm pro-freedom.
I'm pro-freedom.
I don't.
Pro-freedom.
You
know what I'm really pro though? You know what I'm pro? And I think everybody who's listening to this can agree. I'm pro leave the fucking kids alone. That's what I'm very much
exactly.
Pro. Leave the kids
and you
alone.
do have to have. That's what government is there to do, is to protect children. That's what it's there for. Because there are kids in those situations, and there are monsters out there, and sometimes you can't catch them, and sometimes you catch them. When you do, you got to hold on to them. If you don't, more kids are just going to be victimized.
The abusers have more rights than the victims. So true. And I hate to say it, and but it's so true. I think that certain political parties are just so interested in the fact that most of these abusers are their voters, You know what I mean? Like, we don't
Yeah.
want to take down a big voting bloc, and they just don't care as long as they stay in power. And I
Right.
think most people, and I see people saying shame on Michelle Wu, shame on Michelle Wu. But even more than that, shame on the people of Boston who voted in Michelle Wu when they had a chance to turn their back on this kind of stuff, and they
Yeah.
didn't do it.
Yeah.
So you had a mayor in there before that, and Marty Walsh was just, your typical union goon, but he wasn't like this young lady here, who's a born and bred communist who's come up in the system, is totally indoctrinated, and they're going to destroy that city like they destroyed New York, which is just a hellscape now, completely unlivable. You watch; it'll never be returned after what she ends up doing to it.
I mean, and that's why I was saying it's the problem isn't always corruption. I'm sure Michelle Wu at home is a good person. I'm sure she cares and thinks she cares and stuff like that. So it's not about, it's just that's the real danger is people who think they're on the right side, who think they're doing something, who think they care about children. It's about the children.
Yeah.
Well, it is about the children, except it's really
That's right.
not if you're not willing to protect them.
Right.
So
You have to, if you have to arrest your voting bloc and put them all in prison, which means you might lose the next election to protect children, then you have to. And you know what? Let me tell you something. Republicans are no better. They don't do anything. Donald Trump had 4 years in office. 2 of those years, he had the Congress and he had the Senate. He had a rubber stamp, and he didn't do shit. He didn't drain the swamp. He made it swampier. He did nothing. And I'm talking to you right now as a Trump voter. I voted for Donald Trump 2 times. And both times he failed me. Excuse me. Well, the last time he lost, but the first time he totally failed me. So don't come here and say, "Oh, these guys are bashing liberals. It's a right-wing show." It's not. But
no,
we're just
we don't want to be
calling it like we see it.
And we do not want to be confused with those people that believe in like Pizzagate. Or I don't even really know what it is except through liberals. But I mean, this massive conspiracy involving, I don't know, tens of thousands of children being enslaved or whatever the hell it is. I mean, I don't even know. I don't give a moment's thought to any of that craziness. I don't think many Republicans do, but maybe they do. Maybe some of them do. I don't really know. We don't want to tolerate any kind of weirdness or craziness on any side.
Right.
But the
On
weirdness
either side.
The weirdness on the other side tends to be more credible. They run TV networks.
Tends to be more credible.
They run movie
Right.
studios. They're at the
Right.
top of economic positions.
And
there are people in medical schools. They still in medical schools now. The teachers are not allowed to tell their students that only a female can give birth. It's like so you're divorced. You're that divorced from reality now.
Right.
In your medical schools.
In medical schools. And somebody mentioned in the comments, look at all the people who got away with the Epstein child sex abuse case. And let me tell you something. Jeffrey Epstein, if there were Republicans on that client list, you have that client list. If Donald Trump is on that list would be so fucking public, it would be splashed on billboards on Route 95. The reason why you don't know is because there was prominent Democrats on that list, like Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, whose wife divorced him because he took so many trips to Epstein Island. And again, this is all in court documents. You don't have to listen to Dave. It's all in court documents.
Yep.
This woman is sitting in a Florida prison for 15 years for trafficking girls to nobody. I mean, we have no Johns, we have no co-conspirators, we have no co-defendants. And I'm not even sure Jeffrey Epstein ever abused anybody. To be brutally honest with you, what I think was, we do this thing, and we make constructs, and I think Jeffrey Epstein could have been a construct. I mean, he was a guy who was deeply embedded with Mossad, and he was a guy who they pushed into elite social circles to get things on people. And again, I'm not covering for him. When I say that, I just say I don't know, because nobody knows how he made money. He's never made a trade.
We kind of there may be a lot of corruption, and he may have been, but it may have been more. He's kind of like, say, the predators that you're talking about in your book that kind of had an obsession, and they're willing to also capitalize that by creating videos and selling it, right? So, but I don't think there's any question that Epstein. I mean, we got the testimony from the girls that he abused. Just when I say abused, there's different levels of abuse, but you're taking 15-year-old girls and you're making them giving you sexual pleasure and massages and things like that.
Massages, yeah.
Grooming them and stuff like that. So,
and you're right.
Go ahead.
Giovanni, Prince Andrew got a pass, but my God, how did he look in that interview when they interviewed him about Epstein? Oh my God, go back to that on YouTube. Is that the most guilty, bizarre interview you've ever seen in your life? When they interviewed him, and you're right. I mean, there were princes caught up in this thing, and again, I'm saying that because everything about the guy's life is shrouded in mystery, and it wouldn't be like that for anybody else. I mean, if I can go out and find everything I need to know and talk to people who graduated high school in the 1960s with a guy and random people in New York, and all I did was just a little bit of work, why don't I know anything about Jeffrey Epstein? I don't know anything about the guy. I don't know how he got to these points in his life. So I'm just wondering why it's so shrouded in mystery. That's all. And again, you know, I'm not covering. I'm the guy who chases these people down. You know what I mean? I'm the guy who hates these people. I'm here to burn the whole thing down, not cover.
I think a lot of his life has been exposed, though. I forget the name of. There was a guy that he kind of managed to. He was a wealthy investor that he managed to kind of ingratiate himself to the point where he was managing his money, and that became the basis of his billions, his early billions. And
I think
whether there's
he owned a big clothing brand. I'm sure somebody in the comments will help me. Very famous guy. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. And then I don't think there's any question that Epstein was probably a genius. I'm just talking about the subject matter that he was interested in, his ability to work with numbers and do a lot of. So I think he probably did know how to scam people and then take the money and make money out of it. I think was a high IQ kind of guy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm no doubt he was high IQ. I just think he was more connected than people like to believe. I just can't see some random guy sprouting up, and there's got to be more behind that, that's all. I know a thing or two because I've seen a thing or two here, buddy. You know what I mean?
But guys sprout up. I mean, that's the history of America. Guys, I mean, most of the guys that have come up that go on to be wealthy saints in the world of capitalism, Bill Gates, these guys come basically from nothing. A lot of these guys, Trump didn't. Trump actually came from money, but a lot of these guys, that are the top entrepreneurs in our country, they came more or less from nothing. So I mean, it does. That's the great thing. That's the great thing about this company.
Trump was handed $1 million industry. He turned it into a $1 billion industry, but he was handed it. I mean, he didn't work for that. He was handed that by his father. So I'm just being fair. Again, I was a Trump voter, and I don't know who I'm going to vote for this time. I might write Kevin in, but I mean, we're really kind of fucked on that. But Mary, I read your comment about the girl who disappeared on 24 years ago. We never found her. You'd have to get me a name. I don't remember specifically. I do know of the girl who went missing up in New Hampshire, Maura Murray. The great true crime writer James Renner has covered that in depth.
I did a series on her too. Yeah.
Highly recommend you look into his work. He thinks she's still alive and well, living in Canada or something. Has a lot of great
evidence possibly too. I haven't seen that. I think that it's possible that she had kind of a amnesiac breakdown from the accident, from the stress that she was under. The most likely explanation is that she wandered into the woods, either intentionally or not, and died. She was in a suicidal state, it would seem.
Right.
But I mean, I do think that there's a pretty good chance that she was. I mean, there was a guy a few years ago who was skiing in New York State. He was a firefighter, and he was with a bunch of other firefighters from Canada. They went every year. And this guy they were up about to go, and all of a sudden he realized he forgot his wallet or his phone or something. He said, I have to go back to my car. So he goes back to the phone, he goes back, and nobody sees him again for days. So when he didn't come back up to and meet the party, they launched this massive search. Thousands of people, because he was a firefighter. So they searched the mountains, everything, nothing turned up. And then 4 or 5 days later, he calls up his wife from California. He goes, I don't know how I got here, but I'm here. And he basically had some kind of an amnesia attack. He may have hit a tree skiing down or something like that, and didn't have a serious injury. And they actually found he seemed to have hitchhiked with a truck driver, and went all the way across the country. Yeah. And the guy let him go, and I think he was there, and he had no money, and didn't even really know who he was or how he got there. But he eventually remembered enough to call his wife. And so it happens that people have, a brain episode like that.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's good.
Yeah, we're over 2 hours. I think It's time for everyone to digest and go to bed. One more thing. I see the comments, a lot of Sandra Crispo connections out there. I left my email in the comments, guys. If you have any information about Sandra Crispo's life, background, anything, please email me. I'm starting the outline of my investigation into that. And I was just on the way home from dinner tonight talking to my wife about it. And it looks like there's a lot of interest out there from people, and it's a case that looks like nobody's forgotten. And I'm really glad to hear that. And I was literally just talking to my wife Christina about Sandra and how I should do something on it. And it looks like the vibe is right for that. It looks like people are interested in that. So if you have any information, I left my email in the comments. Please reach out to me and let's talk.
Yeah, if anybody has any information, or if anybody really is into research and just wants to help Dave or any of us do research on these cases, I mean, because a lot of times you don't need to have any special skill, you just need to have the internet, because sometimes it's just too much to find for one person, you know. So if anybody wants to reach out and help them out, that would be fantastic. Likewise, we're shooting our first on the beginning of our documentary on this Tuesday. It's coming quick. Just talked to Melanie, so she'll be meeting us there at 9:00. And so if anybody wants to help us out, reach out. We'll find a spot for you.
Thank you so much for watching, guys. Thanks so much for your interest. And we will see you, probably in like 24 hours. So
I've committed until next Tuesday, doing something every day. So we'll be on again. We don't want to do Karen Reed every night because we've lost some of our national audience that we had. So we're going to go back to doing other cases and eventually get into it. But thank you very much, guys, for being here with us. I appreciate it. Oh, and you know what, Dave, if you do write me in and enough people write me in, will I have to change this to Kevin from White Cottage Tales?
Yes. Wow. That's a fucking horrible joke. Have a great night, guys.
All right. Good night, guys. Thank you.
Good night, buddy.